Richards trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Pod Street Bullies podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Pod Street Bullies. My name is Derek.
And I'm John. What's going on, everybody?
And once again, one of the Matts, Matt Casey.
Holy this Monday.
How many times are you going to start off with that song?
John's making us be happy today.
Happy times.
We're just happy, effing happy.
Come on, get happy.
Derek, so for the record, to our loyal listeners, Derek's still rocking the Harvard hat. Derek, I think it should be your mission to get that signed by Chuck. I think that's like...
Oh, is that you paying homage to Chuck?
Listen, I'm hoping one day to sell this hat, and I don't want to lower the value. I don't.
I'm just going to definitely a rare commodity.
Are you do they call you the Chuck Fletcher of cabinets?
They do not, actually. They call me the Danny Briere of cabinets.
They don't quite know that you're going to screw it all up yet.
No, I show up when it counts in the playoffs.
You can't quite read the cabinet market. Is that what it is?
I can't quite put my thumb on it. To be completely honest. Man, I feel like I'd get less shit if I wore this into work than I do here with you two dicks.
I don't know, man.
I don't know either. Yeah, those guys are tough in there too. But either way, like Matt Casey was alluding to, we are going to keep it positive about the deadline.
I didn't say that.
Well, all right, let me clarify. John wanted to essentially make sure that this did not turn into a wine fest, which every other podcast seems to be these days, which,
Boo-hoo.
I mean, rightfully so.
Right.
I get it. You know, there's going to be a little bit of whining. I'm just going to forewarn you. Like, I'm not going to be all, but I'm going to.
I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between like criticizing what's going on and just being like, you've wronged me so many times, and what am I supposed to do? And that I'm just tired of that crap.
Listen, I'm going to channel like my what is it? I think sophomore year Derek, where this girl cheated on me. I'm just going to take out all my anger.
This is not a therapy session.
Well, it's going to turn into one. We're just going to get it right off the bat. The deadline came. The deadline has passed. JVR is still a flyer. Shocker. Pat Brown dealt for a 6th round pick in 2023 to Ottawa. Ooh, Zach McEwen traded to the Kings for a 2024 4th round pick, and everyone's favorite jackass, Brendan Lemieux.
But he's a nice guy now, apparently.
We'll see when connecting.
Like, isn't he friendly in the locker room?
Well, him and Tony D are best friends, so I mean, there's the connection right there.
Well, the Hayes connections went bust, so let's go the other direction.
Right? Yeah.
All his buddies at the convention.
Oh boy, the rally,
the T-Pack convention, man.
That, and then obviously we discussed that last week. Isaac Ratcliffe for future considerations. 3 trades, none of which contain the name James Van Riemsdyk. I'll basically start, and John, we'll turn this into a roundtable. Obviously, how disappointed were you that the Flyers did not trade James Van Riemsdyk at the deadline?
You know, I think Wednesday came along, and I started actually really thinking, we're not going to trade this guy. You know, trades just kept happening, and I'm like, if he's not traded by Friday morning, we're not going to trade JVR. Mm-hmm. And like, obviously, I'm disappointed because he was our best asset. But I think that's just more, Travis Sanheim. Yeah. but even in that case, right? Like, he would have been a spoiled asset at this point because of he sucked this season.
Yeah.
But I think that like what you have to realize is just that like the Flyers didn't have anything that anybody was interested in. And I know some people don't buy this whole idea where Chuck Fletcher was like nobody was interested in JVR. I kind of do buy it, that it was like the market really wasn't there. Like, look at this guy's numbers. Where is he going to fit on a contender? He's not a third line player. He doesn't have the checking ability of a third line player. He doesn't have the offensive skill of a second line player anymore. You know, so like, even though I'm disappointed and I'm ticked off that we couldn't even get this freaking thing right, the thing that seemed like it was the easiest thing to do in a vacuum, I'm not overly pissed off at just the JVR thing.
Yeah, I think that's like that's the important thing to note is like the rage that you see, you know, for the loyal Flyers fans, like, you know, like us and people that we interact with. I think it's like it's tough for a lot of people to separate. They're not just pissed at the JVR thing. I think that's just like just another thing to throw on there. Yeah. Where like, you know, you look at it, it's like Hoot signs, gets a back injury. Cam signs, plays the season, gets an injury. Ellis signs, gets an injury.
Guys.
Sanheim signs, sucks. Risto signs, thrives. Like, you know, and so like just the whole body of work.
Yep.
You know, and this is the culmination of it is just it's frustrating. And I think you know, I think we all listen to Flyers Daily for the most part, and those guys, that's it. That's a Flyers sanctioned podcast. They are an official Flyers podcast, and you know, Jason and what's his name,
Bill.
They were both like, we don't understand how we get out of this. And it's like,
no one does. Like we've built ourselves into a spot.
Yeah,
that's their version of like,
doom, right? Like we've painted ourselves into this corner now where there is no cap room, there is little to no talent. Right. And I mean, getting out, yes, you're going to get $7 million in relief once JVR is off the books. Awesome. Cool. You essentially spent that almost in an extension for Sanheim now for what, 7-8 years. Like that's ridiculous. And so now it's like, yes, we can obviously sit here and bitch, but like, the fact remains that they've done this to themselves. Like that's blatant.
You know, the thing is the deal that I'm actually, or I mean, I know JVR was a no deal, but what I'm more pissed off about the trade deadline is actually the McEwen trade. For Chuck Fletcher to come out and say, LA was interested in McEwen for a fifth, but they had to get rid of Lemieux in order for it to happen. And then for him to just openly go, so we were like, hell, we'll take Lemieux too. The fact that you couldn't even just go, all right, we'll take Lemieux for a fourth.
Right.
Like, that's the deal that pisses me off because it clearly shows this guy does not know how to do this aspect of his job.
He doesn't understand the concept of leverage. Like he sheerly just does not. He thinks that, you know, oh, something will come along and fall on my lap. Like, no. Go out there and get creative.
Get out there, you find that freaking dog.
Right. Get out there and you find that freaking trade. It's ridiculous.
I think like, you know, the lack of creativity is definitely there as well. And you're like, oh, you know, you saw all these teams moving people. And, you know, the JVR one in hindsight, it's like, you know, he should have been traded. He should have been on the block in December. Like, you know, he should have just been the moment that if that finger injury happened, like he should have been on the block. So, you know, that's definitely frustrating there. The one thing I'll give them credit for, the one, you know, they haven't all been bust, and looking back in hindsight, the Giroux trade and the fact we got Tippett out of that, you know what? That's not terrible. Given the circumstances of that, I'll give him some credit on that. Tippett, in my mind, has been a pretty solid player and looking more from him, but
he's come into his own.
Yeah.
Like though, I think you look at it two ways. If you're Chuck Fletcher approaching the deadline, you can either A, risk a lesser return and trade him early, like a week before the deadline, or B, you wait until more chips fall, see where the value's at, and know more so what you're getting. And what he didn't realize is that these teams weren't waiting. They were going out and getting the player that they wanted and the players that were available. Your Max Domi's got traded. Obviously, Patrick Kane, that was a bit of an underwhelming deal. But, like, he waited for all that to happen. And while he did, I think it was Saravalli or Dredger, one of them said he overcooked the market.
Right.
Like, it just ended up being spoiled goods. It's you boiled spaghetti for too long. You ended up with absolute shit.
I also just really do wonder how many teams were actually interested in JVR. Because again, you look at the numbers and everything, it's just not appealing. You know, I mean, I'd like to think that there was a way for him to get something. Right. Like a sixth round pick. But if you ask me, would I be happier with a sixth round pick or just JVR still on the books? I'm honestly feeling neutral about either.
I'm with you. The reward is obviously at the end of the season with the cap relief. And I think it's like, you know, that's a brutal gut check to see the rest of the NHL on like what our asset is, you know, how like poor our asset management is. And the fact that guy's making something, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like that deal when it signed. I was like, JVR again? Like, it wasn't even, you know, JVR in the Toronto years was okay, but like his first stint with Philly wasn't anything to write home about either.
I mean, he clearly had a strength, and that was it. Like that, you know.
I don't know the last time that guy's tipped a goal in, for God's sakes.
The one thing I will give Chuck credit for, and these are very few and far between. I was listening to High and Wide. I think it was Travis Ballingoff had mentioned that last summer the asking price to unload James Van Riemsdyk was the 2023 first round pick of the Flyers and the 2024 first from Florida. So standing pat and not trading him and unloading him and giving up assets to do so, I think was a smart choice. But like to your point, if we're staring down the barrel of either A, keeping him, or B, trading him for a sixth round pick, like, I mean, yeah, it's a sixth round pick. Like, the shot of it panning out is very slim. I'll take that chance. Like, I understand, you know, we're not going to do anything with the cap flexibility now, but at least it's there, you know, and if we have to retain, it turns into a fifth, a fourth, whatever. I don't care. Like, you get something out of it.
I get that.
You know,
but I think that the whole thing is it's like we came into this season knowing, okay, we weren't going to be any good. By default, come the trade deadline, we are sellers.
We weren't going to be any good before Couturier and Atkinson were like,
and like, so then you think of that mentality of sellers. It's like, okay, well, you're going to make trades and get some draft picks. But I think that all of us agreed that the Flyers just didn't have the pieces to be effective sellers. When it's JVR is your best player, and he's got what, like 12 points this season?
Yeah, he's got like 9 goals and a couple of assists.
Right. Like it's just not in the cards. And now that's not me saying that Chuck Fletcher is doing well at his job by any stretch. I do, you know, I think we'll get into it a little bit more, but like, I don't think that this guy is cut out for this particular job, you know, but I just think that like criticizing him solely for the trade deadline is a little too much. You add it to his
the Chuck Fletcher sucks Sunday.
Right. Exactly. Put another cherry on the top and you're like, okay, here's more proof, but I just don't know what could have possibly been done. Come the deadline. I mean, during the deadline.
And that's, I think, where you start to look at how creative can he get. Like, we saw a lot of deals that were brokered by a third team where you pay them a third, fourth, fifth round pick to retain a quarter of the salary. Like, if you're going to come across a team like Tampa Bay, where, back to your point probably like 10 minutes ago, John, you had mentioned a third line checking role. Like, no, JVR doesn't fit that. But your teams that are deep and your teams that are, you know, top of the standings here, a lot of them don't. They can roll 3 skilled lines. So you find a team that can roll 3 skilled lines, and you can say whatever you want about, you know, quote unquote skill here, but find a team that could facilitate that. And if it's Tampa and they can only take on, you know, 1 million, find a team that's going to broker it, and find a team that you're like, hey, listen, take 25% of his contract. We'll take 50, whatever the numbers work out to be. We'll give you a 4th round pick. Like, I can part with that and then deal with what's coming back from Tampa Bay. You might get a prospect. You might get a higher pick. You're switching out a 4th round pick for a 2nd round pick. I don't care. Like, it's still something of value coming in return for something that's not going to be here next year.
Yeah, I think Chuck just outweighted the market. And I look at that overall that like, Chuck's job when you break it down is to ice the best team possible given salary. And yes, he was, he inherited a ton of crap. He made a push, and I would argue a respectable push to try to capitalize on Giroux's last hurrah. And it didn't work. And I would say some of that's not his fault. I think, AV quit on this team, which nobody really predicted. And like, there's been injuries, there's been all sorts of stuff. And so I think that, I can't fault him for all the circumstances, but there are certain things that you can fault him for. And that Sanheim signing, good Lord, how many people are that Sanheim signing, I just think it was a dumb signing. Like there was no reason why that had to happen right then and there. There was zero reason.
That's been the gripe from the beginning. Absolutely.
Right. And so, and you look at that, and I think, I don't know if he was genuinely shocked or just like playing coy, but when I guess it was Charlie O'Connor, like kind of just put it bluntly to him in that press conference. And then again, they've asked Torts, and Torts showed up. Like, I don't think they realized just like not only the fans and the ridiculous guys with bags in their heads and stuff like that. It's like the actual local press who follow this team day to day who are like, this is bad. Like, you are doing a bad job. If a player was doing a bad job, if a coach is doing a bad job, if a trainer is doing a bad job, they get freaking fired. And Chuck has done a bad job. And it's like, it's not that I would argue he hasn't made the team worse in 3 years, but he certainly has not made it better.
No, that's the whole point of the GM. You got to make the team better.
Right. And I think the only moves that he's made that have been positive are the Giroux, which like we all pissed and moaned.
Given the circumstances, sure,
right. Yeah. But I would argue that the Tortorella hiring is the only really smart move that he made to date.
Absolutely.
Which, I don't know if you need a GM to do that. I feel like you could have probably had, our wise board of advisors making that call.
I mean, I called that before they even hired Vino. I said I thought Tortorella would be a good hire, and I'm sure a lot of other people too. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, I said, blah, blah, blah. I'm not.
I was against it for all the reasons that people like stereotype Tortorella, but now I'm totally on board. Like, I was like, this guy got loud mouth, like
But to your original point, though, it's not necessarily like this, and this. It's a compilation of the just, I'll call it incompetencies, like the things that he's doing that are not benefiting this team, and the things that he continues to do, not learn from, making the same mistake over and over again, standing pat at trade deadlines, not getting the value. Like, we waited on Simmons, shit the bed. Waited on JVR, same situation. We waited too long. Last deadline, you waited for Giroux, and you waited, and then you make that deal. And it's paying off, but like, it's always going to be a game of, what could have been. Like, what if we could have traded him to Colorado? Who would we have gotten? What if we could have traded him to Tampa? Like, all these other teams and what the returns could have looked like versus what we got. Because we still don't know what we got. We have another draft pick next year that's going to come into play. We'll see how that goes. But it's the compilation of things that has frustrated me, because you've got a guy who came into a decent chance, like a decent opportunity. He could have really put his mark on this franchise, and he's underwhelmed to this point. He's been completely underwhelming. And the trade deadline, like, you can call it recency bias, but like, this is bad. Like, this was pretty bad.
This was bad. And I don't like, do you think the day the season ends that they announce he's gone, or do you think they still give him a shot?
They've got to. Like, I don't care if it's the day the season ends. I don't care if it's the day before the draft. If he oversees another integral part of any type of like happening during the season, off season, whatever, I don't have any confidence that he's going to make the right moves. I really don't.
I mean, I think that's the key. It's like he has lost all confidence, and you hear it, when coaches get let go and stuff like that. Even Tortorella, AV, who's the guy who just got let go in Vancouver? Boudreau.
Yeah, that's a shame too.
The line that everybody uses is, "Oh, his message is now falling flat. It's getting lost." And like, that's exactly what's happened with Chuck. He just has zero credibility with the fan base. And the only one who does have credibility with the fan base, in my mind, again, is Tortorella. And like,
yep.
I don't know.
Rightfully so.
What do you think of his press conference? Because I was a little like, Torts, I don't know if that's the hill you want to die on, man.
But I mean, if you're him, like, what are you supposed to do? You can't just stage a full board or full on mutiny and be like, yeah, man, Chuck fumbled the bag. He really screwed up. Like as a head coach, you kind of have to carry that water. You've got to be able to stick up for your GM because he's the guy that hired you, or at least had a part in the hiring process. So I didn't expect him to go up there and say things like that. Like, Chuck sucks. He needs to get out. This is bullshit, blah, 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 blah. But I did expect a bit more like curtness to it, like maybe a bit more like fence sitting, if you will. Maybe not necessarily one position or the other. Be like, look, I'm not the GM. Chuck made his decisions. That's that. This is the team that I'm tasked with icing night in and night out now, and that's what I've got to do. And people are going to gripe no matter what. People are going to look at that and be like, well, why didn't he take a stance? Or if he goes the opposite way and reams into Chuck, they're going to be like, oh, he was too harsh. He's going to lose right here. Like, you can't say the perfect thing,
And I, my thing is towards his whole, and I get your point. I understand. You don't criticize your boss, especially in public. I'm sure,
Oh yeah.
If it happens in private, but towards this whole thing of accountability from top to bottom. And like, it's like, oh dude, in some way you can't let that slide. And I think he's probably said it pretty clearly too. He's like, oh, we lack a competitive or a skilled team. And it's like, it doesn't get more blunt than that. Like, GM, like, get me some skilled players. And it goes back to the Goudreau thing. It's like, time's not right for Goudreau. It's like, but he's a skilled player. We don't have any. He wanted to come here. Like,
oh yeah.
What? Like, what the hell are we doing?
We had the conversation in the offseason, like, skill breeds skill. Skill brings skill. So if you want to jumpstart it, you bring a guy like Goudreau in who had expressed he wanted to come here. And then people are going to be like, oh, I want to play with Johnny Gaudreau. Oh, I want to play with him. I want to be there. So you can bring people in and like, okay, you shed some dead weight when contracts expire. You trade people that, your perennial bottom sixers that aren't going to, amount to much more than that because we have a plethora of them. So it's like, okay, we replace that guy with, a little bit of an upgrade, whatever it might be. You might be in the market for a big name free agent. Maybe you're looking at a trade for Ryan O'Reilly this deadline. Maybe that's what you're looking at. Guys want to come to play with other guys.
Now. No way.
Yeah, but when it broke a finger or something like that.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Like I feel bad for O'Reilly. I do not feel bad for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
No, between Toronto and then it seems like Boston's getting some casualties as well. And it's I have zero sympathy though. It's like the only team I can really have sympathy for is Columbus. Like that team has just been decimated at this point. But again, not a lot of sympathy there.
No, your team's like Toronto. No. I was on their podcast one time. Did I tell you that? Like Leafs Forever or something like that, talking about like the pyramid thing for Toronto and Kate Smith and this and that.
Huh.
Yeah, and I was like, this is the official Maple Leafs. I was like, I'd have dressed up for this. Like,
one of the things that cracked me up was, typical Flyers fans when Chuck was like, I made 17 calls today and I got like 2 back. And it's like,
I hate that.
That's brutal, but people are like, there's 32 teams, you idiot. It's like, well, you freaking moron. There's not 31 other teams that are buying at the deadline. It
drives me nuts.
But I don't remember a trade deadline where I'd been like this hooked on it, and like to the point, like I was like, watching some live. I was on Twitter, and it was like 3:05, and I was like, oh crap, I have to go pick my kid up at 3:15. I was like, oh no. And like, just feeling the anger, but I was like, I almost missed pickup because of the trade deadline.
Oh yeah. I'm on the phone. I think I was on the phone with a customer and I'm like refreshing Twitter. It's like 2:59 and I'm like, did it happen yet? And I'm like, I actually minced words and I almost said Van Riemsdyk on the phone with the customer.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh boy, because I've joked with customers before. We can see like photos of their kitchen beforehand. Right. And like the one guy had a like a Penguins thing or a Bruins thing. I can't remember. And I'm like, walking him through install and this and that. And I'm just like, there's one thing though, you are going to have to take down that Penguins magnet on your fridge. And he's like, whoa, hold on. And I'm like, I'm a Flyers fan. I'm just joshing you, pal. Like, it's all
right.
good. But I mean, all in good fun. I've also made other jokes that fell completely flat, but it's fun. It's always fun.
I'm sorry. What's this have to do with my cabinets, sir?
Right. Like you're getting orange cabinets now.
So I guess, like, I mean, what? I don't know. Are we done complaining about the trade deadline for a little bit?
Well, John's not back yet, so we still have time. But no,
So,
I mean,
I don't know. What have you seen the last couple games from the team? We had a rough stretch on the West Coast there. And then I feel like, we had the Rangers game, and then last night we had the Red Wings game. I mean, what are you thinking about the team now?
The Red Wings game, I was impressed by Joel Farabee. I thought he had a tremendous game after really being criticized. Yeah, exactly. And he needed that. Now, there's penalty here or there, like that sucked. I think it was a slashing call against him, and it's like, man, like, come on. But at the same rate, the chances that he had were quality chances. He made opportunities left and right, which I think was fantastic. But the one guy, and I continue to be impressed by him, and John Tortorella as well, Noah Cates. He's looked absolutely a part of this team and should be for the foreseeable future. Yeah. And if he continues at this, I really think that he could have a huge impact on this team moving forward and a very steady presence, dare I say, a middle six role.
He reminds me of rookie Sean Couturier, quite frankly, in the way that he plays. And, you think it's a different scenario, but, Couturier basically made his bones with the shutdown series of Malkin in, I want to say 2012. And I just see a lot of similarities with Cates, and they had him playing on what's his name, McDavid. It doesn't get any bigger than that. And he did pretty darn well on him. And so I think you're right that Cates has been impressive. Tippett's been impressive. He just needs to find the back of the net a little more. And same with Farabee. It's like the three of them, I think, look good. And that Rangers game, it was such a microcosm of what this team is, where I think we outplayed them for a majority of the game. In the third, they really started taking us to it. But it's the moment that it becomes either power play or man down or 3-on-3, we're toast because we don't have those skill players.
Absolutely.
And that's just the harsh look in the mirror every time we have to do it. Sorry, John's back. Do you want to complain anything more about trade deadline stuff? We've moved on.
I mean, if you moved on, then you moved on, and that's fine. I had a kid blowing chunks in their bed, so I had to go clean that up.
If you're gonna spew into this.
So we're touching base on just what you've been in. What's caught your eye, I guess, is the best way to put it in terms of these past couple games against the Rangers, Detroit. We touched on Farabee, having a good game against Detroit, touched on Noah Cates, just continuing to have a good season, really, and showing that glimpse here in that Detroit game with the goal. But I mean, in terms of what you've seen these past couple days with the games that we've had, I mean, name some of your guys that you've been impressed by, some of the guys you've been a little underwhelmed by. Just let's turn this into a conversation.
All right. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I haven't really gone into these last two games with any sort of excitement. But a big stick Nick is my dude. I really, really like what he brings to the table.
Did you see his quote where I guess was it Lemieux or someone was calling for the pass behind him? He's like, I get a breakaway every 2 or 3 years. I'm not passing it.
Right. Good for him, man.
Right? I get we don't need 12 of him.
It's nice to have one.
But I really like what he provides, and it's also one of those players where it's when they do score a goal, it's like Bartolo Colon hitting the home run,
right.
You're just
everybody's happy. Right. His reaction too, he's skating around, he's got his tongue sticking out, he's enjoying it. Don't take that away from anybody. Come on.
I mean, and I like what I saw at a Lemieux. I mean, I think
that was my question. What I don't, besides Sam Morin, decapitating him a couple years ago. I've never seen
out of him.
I've never paid attention to him. What are we getting with him, and what wasn't clicking with the Kings? Because he didn't look bad last night. I thought he looked okay.
He's another piss and vinegar type guy. Which, okay, I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, no, you know, I think he's just kind of is what he is. And I'm just more interested to see the dynamic because I don't know what type of impact his interaction with Lawton and TK and Hayes had like a year ago, but you know, he is. And in a team that has a couple of them already, like what's one more, you know, why not?
Right. For 20 games. Hell. Yeah. Give it a shot.
Yeah. I mean, is he expiring after this year?
Yeah. Oh,
gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, hey, if he works out and we want to keep him, awesome. Cool. Whatever. Like maybe he replaces Pat Brown. I don't know, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
not very high.
He looked quick. You know, he looked like a fast and, you know, little scrappy. And like, I'll go on record too, where I don't necessarily get the McEwen trade. I don't get it.
I don't either.
No.
And, you know, I'm kind of bummed because I thought he was good. He's obviously hasn't been playing for the last month or so because of the jaw injury. And I don't know if his jaw was wired, man, like I bet he's lost all sorts of body weight. And stuff like that.
Well, he was on the ice with the Kings recently. I know that because but he's got like the jaw protector, you know.
Yeah.
Which you should obviously. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong here. I think this McEwen's a better Lemieux, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, I feel like when I look at that trade, and I've already made some comments about it, but like I look at it as Chuck Fletcher's inability or he's like afraid to take a risk. Like if he says, you know what, I'll take Lemieux for a fourth, and the Kings walk away from the deal, like what's the real loss there?
Right.
You know, I mean,
like, oh no, we don't trade McEwen. Like
you arguably, you know, keep the better player, you know, when he's available and a well-liked player, both in the city and the locker room, where it's like, you know, see what else you can get. And if you end up ruining the deal, then whatever, you know?
Tried.
Right.
Right.
Like, not like we can get more pissed at you, you know?
Right. But I mean, I could see a guy like Lemieux sticking where it's like, okay, I want to keep my fourth line as like a known commodity. And it's like stick him and Delorier and whoever.
Right.
You know, then like I'm all right with it. I mean, there's no skill on that line whatsoever. But if you really just wanted to be a bunch of bruisers, like I'm okay with the idea of Lemieux like earning a contract for like $1 million.
Right.
Why not put Lashinsky? Like, I feel like, again, I don't know how he's going to pan out or if he's going to stay healthy.
Sneak up on that guy with a 22. That
Jesus Christ.
With that, dude.
Oh,
your disgust for Lashinsky. How do you say it? Lashinsky?
Everybody's favorite Polish.
Like, do you care to elaborate like on your disdain for this man? Like,
I'm just over it. I'm sick and tired of the conversation where it's like, well, Tanner Lashinsky might have an opportunity on the bottom six. We've got 9 million bottom sixers.
Right.
He's like 26 years old. It hasn't worked. He's injured all the time.
So what about Wade Allison?
I mean, well, first of all, I think he's got more skill than Lashinsky, but like,
sure, of course. But put him on a fourth line with those guys. I feel like that's a real shit stirring line.
But who's centering it? Does Lemieux play center?
Sure.
I think he can. can.
Farabee played center. Why not put Lemieux there? Like,
right.
I mean, who gives a shit played wing.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, poor Justin Braun is just like, oh, damn.
Damn it, I'm stuck here for 20 more games.
Yeah, another 2 months at the Motel 6 in
Chuck Fletcher goes to him, if I'm lucky, I'll get a 10th round pick out of you, Justin. And Braun goes, we only have 7 rounds now, Chuck. Oh, man.
Damn it. I knew I'd been bamboozled. Why Yzerman called me and said he'd give me a 10th round pick.
He said he'd trade me his first round pick in the OHL priority selection. I didn't even think we had those.
I know we moved forward here, but I got to get your guys' opinion on this. The report is that there was a deal in place for JVR that was contingent upon, I think it was Detroit, moving somebody else.
Yep.
Are you buying that?
I mean, I am, just because enough people have reported it, you know, who's like do this for a living and have made quite a reputation. My question is, why couldn't we take the player like we were taking Lemieux?
I'm assuming he had term. is what it was. Which like
probably
that would have set me off if like even if it was like, hey, we'll have a salary, but we got to take this guy with 2 more years at $2 million term. I would have been like, oh, come on.
Well, like the Jordan Greenway thing. Like
exactly.
That proposed. Well, I think the thing that like the way that Chuck Fletcher said it was like, we knew we had a deal in place almost like he was kind of sitting back and waiting to see. Like, I really hope that this guy didn't go, oh, well, we might have a deal and then I'm going to go play some golf, while I wait to see if this works. Like, I hope that there was still calls being made. I mean, he made 17 of them that day.
Damn.
Well, that's my comment, John, was that
tied my daily high.
People were going nuts. Like, there's 31 other teams. It's like, well, there's not 31 other buyers, you jackasses. Right. Like, you're not gonna call Arizona and be like, hey, you want some JVR action? Like, it'll be good for you.
I mean, they'd be interested in him if you could no longer play.
It'll get you to the cap floor.
Right.
But I also wonder, like, I wonder about Detroit's like legit intentions there. Like,
right. He made no sense.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. So unless they were planning on flipping them and being that broker and getting something out of it and eating 25% and flipping them to Seattle or something like that, then like, I don't understand how that was going to benefit them, especially like, they were coming off a back-to-back last night. Boo-hoo. We've had to do it all year long. But, that team didn't look good at all. I thought their goalie looked good, but
that game was chippy as hell too. I mean, good Lord, for a Detroit Philly game, that got pretty chippy.
Yeah, there's that. They have that one defense. What's that? That
Cider.
Yeah,
that dude's a brute. Oh my goodness, I'd kill for him.
Lemieux cross-checked him.
I'd kill for half a cider at this point.
Well, you get half a cider, you got a Sanheim.
Right.
Maybe on his best day.
Like 2022 Sanheim.
Did you guys talk about his comments and stuff after the trade deadline?
Go for it. What do we got?
Well, I mean, just that whole presser, like
a little bit. I mean, I don't think we focused on we focused on John Tortorella's a little bit, but I would say like his I didn't watch it, but like I listened to it. I listened to the recording of it, and he just sounded pretty defeated. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to like give the guy like quarter or anything like that. But like, he sounds like he's like, I'm not doing well.
Like, that's the thing, though. For all accounts, this guy seems like a really nice dude.
Right.
Right. He's the one who like brings cupcakes to every event that you host. He's always asking, I'm on my way. I'm going past
what
the
do you guys
store.
need?
Do you need anything?
He's Ted Lasso, man. He's a great guy, but doesn't know how to coach.
And I'm sure he is truly trying his best, because he still, I'm doing the best I can. It's just like the best just isn't enough. He's just not good at what he does, No. And I think that like that entire press conference was really like, what do you want me to do? I'm doing what I can and nothing is working.
Right. Now, bear with me here. I know you guys probably heard the report about Dave Scott having like a right-hand man explaining the game of hockey to him, which absolutely boggles my mind. But I think that what happened was Bill Barber must have been out of the office. So Dave Scott probably had Chuck Fletcher in his office during the day explaining to him, like, all right, listen, Dave, this is the blue line. Like, you've got to, this is the red line. And here's what
somebody's explaining it to Chuck to explain it.
Chuck's looking at his watch and he's like, God damn it, it's 2:58. Like, I got to go. And Dave Scott's like, well, hold on a second. I got another question. And now Dave Scott's like, well, we didn't trade JVR? And Chuck's, that's why he's so defeated. He's just like, you idiot.
I mean, I'm convinced he thought that the deadline was like an event and it started at 3:00.
He shows up to the press conference like, wait, hold on a second. This isn't it.
I mean, the reality is, though, and it's like, if you put in like the Chuck presser, Tortorella's comments, the what do they call that for the season ticket holders where they were booing him?
They booed the hell out of him.
What was that? The open mic night or whatever it was. But like,
it should have been
the roast of Chuck Fletcher.
The problem is like, yes, it's Chuck Fletcher, but it is, and I've heard somebody else refer to it refer to this group as this, so I don't want to steal, but it is the Flyers Illuminati. Like, it is the entire leadership organization, whatever you want, that's destroying this team. Yes, Chuck Pletcher is the guy. Chuck Pletcher. No, that's the guy who gets a 3rd round pick for JVR.
Fletcher.
Oh God.
But like it's the advisors, right? It's the loyalty to the alumni that like haven't been really around the game of hockey in 30 years. And it's like, even if we got rid of Chuck Fletcher and appointed Danny Briere, if that system is still in place, we're dealing with the same thing.
Yeah. And I completely agree. I think you need to do, and just so we're talking about Barber, we're talking about Holmgren, we're talking about Clark. I heard Clark's not around as much, but
I don't think any of them are, though. Casey,
they phone in,
playing freaking golf and just like, hey, I had this idea.
We should get Brendan Lemieux from LA.
2 words: Nick Delorier, and then no move contract.
Like that's way more than 2, buddy. Like,
right.
Well, they're old. They're old.
Right. We're on the back 9. I've had a couple.
No, but then you have also, back to the roast to Chuck Fletcher thing. Then you have Coates's comments like, get that freaking guy out of here. Like, get them out. And it's just time. The last time we won, I was, I'm the oldest of the group here. I was nowhere even a glimmer in daddy's eye at that point. 1976. I was years away from being born. Like, it is time for them to move on. Right. And, you need to I'm all for having advisors, especially when you're dealing with a corporation. You need that liaison.
Yeah.
But I think you need to get like fresh blood into this organization and get out of like the rut of like, oh, hey, Bernie Perrant visiting the box again.
When that liaison's a part of that group that you're concerned about, then yes, there's a big problem because then they're still running the joint, Right. So and they're fresh blood, get in younger guys, maybe guys that are more analytically driven. Like, I don't know at this point. Like, take something, throw it at the wall, and let's see if it sticks.
Alumni golf tournament and like that car parade they do in the summer. Like, that's where they should be.
Yep.
And there's a place for like alumni advisees, whatever the hell, like, but that's not.
It's a press box watching the game,
right? Like, and maybe Bob Clark has a relationship with somebody that you can use and take advantage, but it's not they should not be the guys at the helm. Right. And I think that's where most of the fan base, and I think including us, are so distraught and disappointed and just don't know how to handle ourselves anymore, because it's like we don't see a way out of this.
Yeah.
Like, when the solution is completely wipe everybody out, it's not going to happen.
But you see, it's a pattern though, because you see it's like between Barber, Clark, and Holmgren, all of them have been coaches for the Flyers. Was Clark a head coach for the Flyers? I think he was, like, right after he was too, assumed like after he retired. But like Barber definitely was. Holmgren, Holmgren was, I think.
I think so too. And they were all in management. I don't know if
they were all GM, but they've all they just keep on getting these roles.
Barber wasn't even a successful coach, like in any stint, because he was with Tampa Bay too.
And I think he was in management, I think, and he wasn't successful.
That's what it was. Yeah, it was like 1 or 2 years or something like that, and he just sucked.
And then we had Hextall, who I think came from a different, obviously, era and probably pissed them off. But like, I almost don't want Danny to be the GM.
No,
it's like it's gonna completely wipe the polish off of Danny's shoes, which we all like hold Danny in a decent regard. But I just think you need an entire new ensemble.
He's a new puppet. He's a new puppet with the same people holding the strings, and that doesn't change anything.
Ownership is banking on nostalgia, continuing to win the fan base over, and it's done.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like this is like the most disgruntled the fan base has been? I think it has.
Oh, yeah. I've seen people on Twitter who are usually, I'm not going to say like happy-go-lucky. We're not talking like, rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies flying out of your a-hole. But like, I'm talking guys that are typically like, it is what it is. Like, I still watch because I love the team. Now they're going off and they're like, I'll never watch this team again until something drastic happens. And like they've broken so many people's sanity when it comes to this team because of the lack of moves, the lack of just overall competency.
Mm-hmm. And
Well,
I think, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
That's okay. I think instead of disgruntled, I would actually use the word like they feel hopeless.
They're fed up
at this point, where it's just like, I mean, even for me, when I read a report where it's like Flyers plan to be busy this offseason, plan to be active, and it's like you read these now and you're like, yeah, whatever, sure,
I'll believe
fine.
it when I see it.
Because like we bought that last year and the year before that, where it was like, oh yeah, of course, yep, definitely, and we'll talk about it, and we'll talk, okay, when we're aggressive, this is who we're going to go out and get. Now I look at it, I'm like, okay, sure, Kevin Hayes to Columbus, my ass.
Our buddy on Twitter just notified me that Bobby Clark has never been a head coach.
Cool. I thought he was kind of Florida. Wasn't he a coach in Florida? Maybe he was the GM in Florida or something like that.
I think he was GM. I think he's been in the front office of other teams, just not as a bench boss right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And he caused all sorts of shit while he was a GM for the Flyers.
He caused all sorts of shit when he went on that podcast last year.
Right.
But the other thing, like you look at, I mean, Holmgren, who like, you know, I think we all like in retrospect, like, man, Holmgren wasn't that bad, but like Holmgren was not a great GM either. Like he did not
too risky.
Yeah, he was all over the place, but
you know, it's well in Vegas.
Right.
Let it ride.
So I don't know. I just feel like, and the other thing that I'll say too is when you hear everybody be like, there is a difference between a rebuild and a teardown.
Absolutely.
And I think like that's another, like, yes, it's, you know, vocabulary, but like that's a difference that people need to understand, that like we are clearly not in a position where we can even sell off pieces for draft picks. We can't even do that. So like what is the route that you have to take? And it's going to have to be through trade.
The roster needs a rebuild. The front office needs a tear down. Like that's the difference there.
And I also think too, though, like the front office also has to realize that when they're saying that they are following this path of a rebuild, that acquisitions like Tony DeAngelo and signing Rasmus Ristolainen and extending Travis Sanheim do not say that. And and that's not a tear down. That's being cautious with your assets. You know, think about all the draft picks we blew for freaking Tony DeAngelo, and then we're already looking to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're not going to recoup them all. Like, there's no way in hell.
We signed Travis Sanheim to 100 years, and now we're like, well, let's try dealing him.
Just complete mismanagement of assets at that point. Like, it's nauseating.
It's to the point where it's like the fan base has zero faith in what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and rightfully so.
I'll also say I'm not in the boat of tanking either. If we lose, we lose. But like, I can't. I barely want to watch this team as it is. I still do it because I'm a psychopath. But like, for a team to be like basically fielding out and mailing it in every night. One, I don't think Tortorella will ever let that happen. Two, I don't want it to happen because I do think that this year has, you know, brought some clarity into Tippett and Cates and, you know,
even Hart to an extent.
Hart
he played well against Detroit.
Yeah, right. That one goal was crappy, but whatever.
Yeah. But like, you get those with Hart, and it sucks. But like those Steve Mason type goals,
I'm looking to see. Like that's one of the things that I'm really looking to see at the end of the year. Like Hart has been injured for the last like two or three seasons at the end of the year. Like he hasn't finished out. Can Hart finish strong and like build on that? And so I don't know. I'm curious to see, like, you know, like it or not, like I think Hart is going to be here to stay. And
unless he doesn't want to.
Right.
His choice.
But I want to see him like, all right, let's, you know, can he stabilize it where it gives us a fighting chance most nights, knowing that like we don't have a lot of scoring in the lineup.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I think the thing that I'm looking towards, looking forward, looking at, I don't know what I'm looking at right now, but like the Tippetts, the Frosts of the world, like I still want to see more, because I think like we've been excited about Tippett and what we've seen, but he's still not showing that he's a top 6 forward in this league. You know, he can't finish enough.
Right.
And it's like, yes, Morgan Frost has made progress, but what does he have? 20 something points.
Yeah. And I don't see, I mean, I know this will be like an off, like I don't see how we resign Frost.
Right.
I don't see how we do it.
You know, and I want to see Sanheim potentially have some sort of turnaround. Like, at least give me some sort of glimmer of, okay, these guys, you know, they had a rough year, the Sanheims, the Farabys, but they started turning around, that they can build off of it next year.
Right.
Yep. Well, then, so, I mean, we're running up on like 50 minutes right now, so we're probably getting close to the end of the show, but I'm sure you guys have all heard reports in regards to, like, you know, it's going to be a busy off season again, you know, looking to unload potentially Hayes. I think there's a rumor about going to Columbus and joining Gaudreau, one of Provorov or Sanheim. I mean, how busy of an off season do you see this getting?
I mean, I'm up for trading anybody minus like a few players, but like, you know, I want to see Hayes go. He just doesn't fit with this team. I want to see Tony DeAngelo go because I do think that could be an opportunity to actually get some assets. You know, it's a 1 year, whatever, eat something if you have to. Like, and then, you know, I go back and forth. I don't really want to see Provorov leave. I don't think that's necessarily gonna, because I think we all agree we need to take steps in the right direction next year, where it's like we can subtract some of these players and hopefully fill in with others. And I think a DeAngelo, I think a Hayes are replaceable. I'm a little worried that the amount that Provorov plays can't be replaced, but I'm really up for anything at this point. Like, I'd even entertain Konechny if it was a good deal.
If the deal's right, yeah.
You bite your tongue, John. You do not move to Konechny.
How upset Casey's son would be.
I would be so upset, and so would my son. He loves Konechny.
I just want something to happen. I need something drastic to happen to show me, like, okay, now we're doing it.
Yeah. No, I think I'm kind of with you on Provorov, and you know, I've said this before. I don't think we're gonna realize what we had until it's actually gone. But like, he chews up minutes, and like, he's pretty consistent. He makes an occasional botched move, but like, you know, I still don't love the idea of like him being our first, you know, our premier defenseman.
Sure,
but I do think it's warranted that, like, I don't think our defensive core in general has been the issue this year.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't be psyched if we ran it back, but at the same time, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, what are we doing?
We need to fix the forwards.
Right. We need to fix the forwards. And I agree with you. I'd love to see Tony D out of here. I'd love to see, you know, Hayes out of here. Hayes' game just ticks me off. It's a lazy game, you know? Yeah. It's like a less skilled Voracek.
It's like our second best player too.
Answer me this then. So let's say we get to the draft, the Flyers end up with like the 7th overall pick, 6th, 7th, whatever. If it were feasible, because this is a complete shot in the dark, it's not going to happen. But if whoever has the first pick would take our first round pick this year, 7th overall, 2024's first round pick, and 2025's along with Konechny, do you think that gets a deal done to draft Connor Bedard?
I don't think anybody is trading away the opportunity to. But seriously though, I really think you could give anything under the sun. But like for what this guy is talked up to be, they're not. Columbus isn't going to trade away the potential of getting the next Connor McDavid, even for, you know, a bunch of other lottery tickets down the line.
Sure.
I mean, the only time it's happened is Lindros, right? Is that like really the only time we ever saw that scenario? And that was because Lindros refused to sign with Quebec.
I mean,
and like,
because they didn't trade for the pick, they traded for Lindros.
Yeah. Right. And so they had Lindros, and you know, we gave up Forsberg and a ton of other people. And like, in retrospect, you're like, kind of wish we held on to him. But like, you know, we had a couple runs. Like, you know, it is what it is. But as it turns out, Lindros was like a brutal locker room guy.
Way to go, Dad.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's fun to play that hypothetical, but I don't see any team that is in the bottom. And like, I'm still baffled that like, oh, there are that many teams that are like legitimately like we could tank every game. And like, there are still so many teams that are like significantly worse than we are. And you know what? They deserve an 80% chance of not getting Bedard. Like,
what are we, like 13 points above last place or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, like we're so far. I think we're at least 10 or 12 above Columbus, and I think they're not even. Are they dead last?
Columbus is dead last. They have 46.
Yeah,
we have 20. We have 59.
Oh, so we have 23 points more
We're
than
in
they
25th place.
Or no?
No, not 23. That's not. Nope.
How
13.
many? 13. Yeah, 13. My math's off. I thought you said 60, whatever. I don't know. It's late. I'm losing my.
That's
my
Chuck
mind right
Fletcher math right there.
I mean, I'm with you, Casey, in terms of like I don't necessarily like to root for tanking, but after that trade deadline, I was like, lose the rest of the games this season, get us into the top 5. Like
and we very well might, but like
Right.
I'm not
we
for
haven't.
like I'm not for
icing an awful team.
Icing an awful team and saying to take your foot off the gas. Like that's just that ruins everything else that we like built positively this year.
Sure.
And
No,
so when I
know.
see people like tank, it's like shut up.
Right.
Like these are pro athletes. High school kids don't tank.
Right.
The competitive athletes just don't do that. But I'm looking at the league standings, man, and like you just look like Columbus, Chicago, San Jose. Like, I mean, it's bad.
Yeah,
like,
the bad teams are
they're really bad. Yeah.
We're
on the upper end of the bad teams.
How's that parody treating you, Gary?
Yeah, a D+ is not a grade they like to give out.
Right.
New. All right, fellas. I mean, I think that covers it. Don't think it turned into too much of a bitch fest. So you're welcome, John.
Yeah, I mean, well, and listen, like I think one thing I want to make clear is it's like I think everybody has every right to be upset.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. But it's just the over dramatic. Your life is depending on the success of the Flyers stuff that I'm just a little over with.
Yeah, you're right. There's too many people that are just gonna bitch and bitch and bitch and bitch. Don't get me wrong, we do it, but like the same.
We have fun with it.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, again, maybe this is just me. I feel like we're a bit more level-headed when it comes to that type of stuff. We can approach
really saying something.
I know,
right?
We like the echo chamber of like Flyers Twitter is pretty amazingly bad. Like it's
pretty bad.
Grade A, like insanity.
Right.
But it's entertaining at the very
least. For sure.
All right. Well then, to cap things off here, fellas. I'm pulling in for Hoagie real quick. Yes, I'm doing it. Shut your mouth.
No, you said you were done. Now I'm going to start whining.
Dude, you whine all the time. Like,
dear God, make me a bird so I can buy far away from here.
I had a priest perform an exorcism for my house, but I never paid the bill. It's been repossessed. Crickets.
They've lost their luster. It's not good.
Yeah, I think it's time we put that to bed.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it again next week. So anyways, Matt Casey, let them know where they're going to find you.
Hey, Pod Street Casey for all your upbeat Flyers news. Actually, I never tweet. I just comment on people's stuff.
With gifts.
With gifts. Yeah.
Right.
I don't even comment. I just put funny stuff out there.
It's Casey's love language. All right, John.
Yep, you can find this podcast on all your various podcast listening receptacles. If you're not happy with the one that you're currently using, Google it.
Yeah, we got to come up with a new line. It's like somebody's already listening.
All right.
What's the deal?
I actually just wanted to get rid of this bit altogether. Like, we know where we can find you and where they can find us. And like,
we are platform agnostic. We're everywhere.
We're all present. And you can find me on Twitter, Pod Street Bob. John's on Twitter, Pod Street Gove. All of us are on Twitter at Pod Street Bullies. Shout out to the affiliates as well. The 5 Minute Major Podcast, they're on Twitter at 5 Min Major Pod. Flyers High and Wide, they're on Twitter at Flyers HW, and the Hockey Focus is on Twitter at the Hockey Focus. All right, fellas. Deadline episode wrapped up. We're done, and looking forward to another week of hockey, right, boys?
Yeah.
These heads hurt.
All right. Well, bye now.
There it is.